What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and you all really seem to love our Origins and Powers series, so we're going to continue this by doing an Origins and Powers video on Shang-Chi. I will say this, the powers this guy has are infinitely more interesting than his origin. Why? Because his origin's pretty straightforward, and not a whole lot going on there. See, most characters have really cool origins, right? Iron Man was a weapons manufacturer who was kidnapped and then became a good guy and developed the Iron Man suit. Captain America was injected with a whole bunch of steroids and blasted with radiation and became Captain America. The Incredible Hulk was blown up, right? I mean, you get all kinds of cool things that lead to these characters becoming who they are. Shang-Chi's origin is actually kind of boring. So the thing about this is that Shang-Chi was raised in the Hunan province of China and was basically the son of a guy named Fu Manchu. We'll talk about Fu Manchu here in a second because that there's a conversation in and of itself. The other part of this is that his mom was a white chick. And the reason why is because she was selected because of her genetic superiority, whatever in the heck that means. Sounds kind of racist, but the whole thing about this is that Fu Manchu and this girl had Shang-Chi. And ever since he was an infant, Shang-Chi was raised with understandings of two things. The first was virtually every form of martial art that exists out there, along with all the different weapons forms as well, along with the idea that his father was basically a great guy who does great things. Now, eventually, he's sent on a mission by his father to kill a guy by the name of Dr. Petrie. Now, Petrie is, of course, assassinated by Shang-Chi, and then along the way, when he was leaving the place, he came across a guy named Nayland Smith. Now, Nayland Smith actually turned out to be a friend of Dr. Petrie and an enemy of Fu Manchu. And then he basically tells Shang-Chi that his dad's a villain. And so Shang-Chi leaves, he goes to talk to his mom, and his mom's like, yeah, your dad's kind of a dick. I always held off on telling you because, reasons that she never really gives. And so because of that, Shang-Chi goes and confronts his father, only for his father to reveal that, yeah, like he's basically the bad guy. He's looking to conquer the world and in turn subjugated under his rule because he believes he's the best person to do so. Shang-Chi and his father get into a fight, Shang-Chi escapes, and off and on over the course of the years, Shang-Chi and his father fight each other until Marvel loses the rights to Fu Manchu. Why? Because Fu Manchu was created by a guy named Sax Rohmer, and Marvel only had the license to make comics about him, and then Sax Rohmer took him away. But ultimately, even if he hadn't done that, Marvel probably would have dropped Fu Manchu because in all honesty, he was racist as hell. Fu Manchu was like an Asian evil sorcerer caricature from the 1970s. Given our understanding of the world and how we see things now, yeah, he was pretty racist to have him, especially considering the fact that the white girl was selected because of her genetic superiority. So there were some pretty questionable, morally questionable, and even ethically questionable things going on at the time. But that's basically the origin of Shang-Chi. Now, having said that, his origin sucks. So don't be sad if you walk away and you're like, yeah, man, that origin's kind of boring as hell. It is. It really is. Don't feel bad. It's the least interesting origin of anybody out there, but his powers are cool. So Shang-Chi has no traditional powers to speak of. He doesn't really have like super strength, speed, or anything like that. But what he lacks in powers, he makes up for with just a ridiculous combat prowess, especially because he's able to master his own energy, his own chi. This guy knows basically every martial art in existence. And he knows like every single weapons form for every martial art in existence. This guy's a one-man army. He's a Swiss Army knife. Now, the only person out there in Marvel Comics that I would say is probably a better fighter than Shang-Chi would be Taskmaster Tony Masters. And the only reason why is because Tony Masters basically has the ability to duplicate the moves of others, right? So if he fights Shang-Chi for a prolonged amount of time, he's basically going to be able to memorize Shang-Chi's moves and actually predict them before Shang-Chi makes them. Now, it's not necessarily a catch-all. There's been times when Tony Masters has been overpowered by Captain America, but a lot of that really seems to do more to the fact to Captain America being just stronger and faster than Tony Masters, as opposed to like fighting style versus fighting style. But be that as it may, Shang-Chi's wildly capable. In fact, outside of Tony Masters, who usually only trains villains, Shang-Chi is the go-to guy if you want to learn how to fight. It's one of the cool things that you see. In fact, Spider-Man actually went and trained with Shang-Chi and learned a martial arts style called the Way of the Spider. Now, the other part of this is Shang-Chi is not simply just a martial arts master. There's other elements about him as well, specifically the idea of meditation. Now, the reason why this is really important is because Shang-Chi's understanding of meditation allows him to tap into his own inner energy, as well as allow people to kind of enhance what they already have. A really good example of this is Captain Universe. Now, those of you guys who don't know who Captain Universe is, it's basically a person who's bonded with the power of the Enigma Force. We call it the Enigma Force. because no one knows anything about it. It just comes from the microverse, this microscopic universe in the main Marvel universe. But the whole thing about this is that when a person is imbued with the power of the Enigma Force, they can presumably do anything in the universe itself, including reality warping. You never really see the powers of Captain Universe on that scale because usually the story doesn't call for it. But there's one particular instance where a woman was involved in a car wreck and it basically lost her daughter and I think her husband and was largely in a coma for a number of years. When the multiverse was collapsing and Captain Universe appeared needing a new host, it bonded itself to this girl. And ultimately, Shang-Chi actually kind of had to help this girl fix her mind essentially by reliving the past trauma to understand what had happened to her. And there were a few times when she would kind of snap back, she would lose it, she'd revert back into Captain Universe, but it was a pretty cool thing, right? That's one of the ways in which Shang-Chi functions. But by and large, you only ever really see Shang-Chi in terms of how he fights and how he bests other people. Now, there was a point in Marvel Comics when Shang-Chi did have actual powers, and it was amazing. So this is one of those moments where you had Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, which I talk about all the time over at Comics Explained, and you guys will never hear an instance where I talk about this and I don't like it. So one of the things that happens here is that the Earth basically gains sentience by a weird, wonky set of events. It doesn't matter, too complex for us to talk about here. But during this process, Shang-Chi gains the power to duplicate himself. And so there's one point where like the Illuminati, right, Reed Richards, Hulk, all those guys, end up facing off against S.H.I.E.L.D. as it's led by Steve Rogers, who's lost the super soldier serum, so he's all old and everything. And like he's literally hunting them down with just this ferocity, right? He's just this crotchety old son of a bitch. Like he's just a mean man, you know what I mean? Just a mean old grumpy man. And like hunting these guys down. A great big huge trap is set by the Illuminati, which includes Shang-Chi. And it's literally just this army, like this guy who can just fight in the most prodigious way ever, taking out every single S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. And that is one thing that I want to solidify here. Despite how cool Shang-Chi is in terms of his fighting style, the martial arts styles he's capable of, how he can overpower people like Black Panther, Captain America, Bucky Barnes, Spider-Man, things along those lines, despite those capabilities, you never really see him in a large role capacity in Marvel Comics. In fact, all you ever really see him playing as is something akin to like Heroes for Hire, especially during Civil War when he was tasked with hunting down Captain America on behalf of Iron Man. But despite all that, Shang-Chi's origin, it is pretty boring, but his fighting style and his capabilities are really, really, really cool. So with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this Origins and Powers episode to an end. Again, not a lot to go on when it comes to Shang-Chi, right? His origin sucks and he can fight really well. That's basically it. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.